All right, I'm really fired up to meet Jen and learn the story of Away. Jen is the co-founder, president, and chief brand officer of Away, a new travel brand disrupting the luggage market by offering first-class luggage at coach prices and by selling direct to consumer. Jen founded Away with Steph Corey, whom she met while both worked at Warby Parker. At Warby Parker, Jen worked as the head of social media, where she spearheaded the brand's early content and partnership efforts, and later as the global head of innovation at All Saints. In 2015, Jen was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 for marketing and advertising. I know sometimes you're saying, like, there's nothing left to disrupt. There are no new ideas, there are no industries, everybody's done it before. I mean, just a reminder, this company just started in 2016, so there are opportunities if you look closely enough, especially in stale and entrenched industries. So to share the emerging story of Away, please welcome Jen Rubio.
Hi.
It's like Stephen Colbert, like I come out. And usually you're sitting over there. Welcome.
Hi,
It's
happy
great to-
Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I had no plans. So.
All right, let's just go to like 10 o'clock then. It was awesome. It's great to have you here. What brings you out? Is it first time at USC?
I used to go to frat parties here. But that was like a long time ago.
It's another thing I did not do. You live in New York, but you're out here. Can you share what brings you to LA besides our wonderful class?
Yeah, I'm here for All-Star Weekend.
Did LeBron or Steph Curry pick you on their team?
I can't say yet. We haven't announced it, but we just announced a collaboration with the NBA that we've been working on for a little while. And that was really fun because we have a company of 150 people that's like 90% women, the rest like men who are not into sports.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we're talking to the NBA and we're like, how about a suitcase that looks like a basketball? And they were like, yeah. We're like, okay, cool.
Cool.
Anyway, we did this amazing collab, and it's launching this weekend, so a bunch of events, a bunch of fun games, and this.
Very fun. Thanks for working us in. So the new product is going to be an NBA edition, sort of like a Spalding basketball, I guess, with the grip.
Yeah, it's literally one of the Away suitcases, which looks like that, but they're orange and black, and they have like a new texture. There's like the inside is like a basketball jersey, and it's cool. I think without going too far into what we do, like a big part of why the company has grown is because we collaborate with so many brands. We literally built our brand off the backs of like other cool brands, which was our strategy from the beginning. So it's been fun to design this thing that has a lot of interchangeable parts, and then we go to a partner and we're like, how do we make this a collab product? So that's what's launching this weekend.
Very cool.
And you get like cool tickets and stuff. I highly recommend starting a company.
For the tickets alone, right? Oh, that's awesome. So before we're going to talk about your life and sort of go backwards, but if you could just give us sort of a snapshot of where Away stands today in terms of, you mentioned the number of employees, and I know it's a private company, so you're not going to give results, but just sort of where it stands in reach, in products, just a quick overview.
Yeah, we shipped our first suitcase on February 23rd, 2016. So a little less than 2 years ago. We're nearing 100 million in sales. I'm bad at math, but that's a bunch of suitcases.
What's the average price point?
So all of our suitcases are under $300. So it's several 100,000 suitcases, couple 100,000 customers. We have 4 retail stores, New York, LA, Austin, San Francisco. We're opening 10 more this year. This time last year, we were maybe 35 people. Now we're 150. We have 60 job openings on the site, if anyone's interested. I don't know. What else do you want?
Okay. So, and how many products total how many SKUs other than the specialized things that you're building?
Yeah, so we've built this entire company so far off just selling one suitcase in a bunch of sizes and colors. And this is a big year for us because we're launching other products, we're launching soft goods. This year we're on a mission to launch like the one perfect everything that you need for travel. But I think anytime we kind of look at these stats or they're mentioned in the press, it's always really interesting because they're like, how many hundreds of items do you have? And we literally just have the perfect suitcase.
And you can customize it. It's got, it's 8 colors, I think, or each of your models have 8 colors. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
But super basic, simple. The aesthetic, I mean, sort of sleek, modern, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
minimalist.
listen, my mom goes on the website and she's like, I don't get it. She's like, it's just a suitcase. And I have to, my mom's the kind of person that like, I used to run social media for Warby Parker, and she would tell all her friends that I worked at Facebook because she would like understand what I really did. And so now I'm like, no, like now we sell luggage. And she was like, I liked it better when you worked at Facebook. Like, no, I never worked at Facebook.
And you never did work there.
But yeah, I think, you know, at first glance, it's like a cute suitcase. You start seeing it a lot more, like LAX especially, and New York, and in San Francisco, where all the early adopters are. But we put so much thought into the design of the suitcase that made it come out this way, that it's like it's the little details when you start using it that have made people real advocates of the brand.
Well, we'll dive into product in a little bit, in a way, but I want to step back. Speaking of mom, give us a little bit about sort of where you grew up, size of your family, what your parents did when you were growing up.
Yeah, no one ever asked me about this. This is so nice. I grew up in the Philippines until I was 7. And it's actually really funny, like the weird things I think about. Like I like didn't speak English when I first came to New Jersey, and I remember like going to school, and I was really smart, but because I like didn't have a good grasp like on the English language, I remember my parents like taking me to not like accent class, but like a teacher that made me not have an accent, because they knew I would have a better time at school. And I was like 7 years old, so I didn't think anything of it. But I kind of look back and I kind of think about everything that's going on now with like immigration and like racism and all the stuff that's going on. And I'm like, I can't believe my parents had the foresight to know that something like that when I was 7 years old would like change my life drastically. Now I sound like a Valley girl, so I don't know how like how well that worked, but yeah, like that really changed things. And I remember when I first started going to school, I like wasn't put in the right classes because they didn't think I like knew the material.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like instead of going to the beach one summer, I had to go to like speaking class.
Well, USC is the most internationally diverse college or university in the country. How many people here from a different country? Raise your hand.
Amazing.
So a lot of people can relate to,
Yeah.
And how many people that from here speak one language and would be absolutely lost if you had to like go and compete academically in a different language. I mean, it's so hard to like take a second language and compete at this level with the best students in the world. So it's something that really can't be overstated.
You guys, all of you.
Yeah, it's a
amazing.
pretty fired up group. So brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have a brother, and I was just telling Cassie about this, who works at Away. My brother is 25, and my sister's 22, and they're both artists, and they like play music and build furniture and paint things, and they think I'm really annoying, because I'm always like, oh my God, are you into music? I like can get you an internship at Warner or Universal. Or like, oh, you build furniture? Like my friend's building this hotel. Do you want to build stuff for it? And they're like, no, it's art. And I'm like the overbearing, annoying older sister. So I'm working on that.
Well, hey, I've got 3 older sisters. I can relate to some of that.
Like, I just want to help.
But yeah, of course, birth order says a lot about you. Not you, but generally speaking, you can tell
No, it
a
says
lot
a lot
sort
about
of in you as well.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You running stuff?
I'm every stereotype ever. I'm a Leo. I'm a complete Leo. I'm like the oldest child, totally the oldest child. Like any chart or anything that you read about me, it's completely accurate.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what did your parents do for work when you were growing up?
My mom's a dentist and oral surgeon, and my dad actually, apparently did like a ton of stuff before we came to the U.S. But when we came here, I remember my mom had to like you know, when you like immigrate to a new country, you have to like redo everything all over again. So she'd been an oral surgeon for so many years. And then we moved to the US and she had to like take the classes all over again. And I remember like all of us going to pick her up at NYU after like her night classes and stuff. But she got all of her accreditation and everything in the US. And then my dad basically like they opened like a dozen kind of like oral surgery clinics in like the tri-state area. And my dad ran those. And I thought that's what he always did. And my dad passed away like 6 years ago. And I never thought, like that's just what I thought he did. And I never like thought to ask what he did before that. And my mom told me like last year that he was like a business professor at like a really good school in the Philippines. So I guess that's where I get it. But it's so funny growing up because I always thought everyone's parents worked together. Like my parents would drive to work together and like hold hands in the car. And I remember there was like, it used to be called Take Your Daughters to Work Day. And now it's like very politically correct. It's like Take Your Child to Work Day. But I remember being in school and one of my friends asking me like, are you going to work with your mom or your dad? And I'm like, what do you mean? Do your parents work in the same place? And it was like a whole, that's when I realized that not everyone's parents work together. But yeah, I grew up with this like, looking back, these like role models for like love and business that I've never been able to reach.
We can talk balance later and
Happy Valentine's Day.
Exactly. There's the video card right there.
Yeah.
So
We can cut that.
you moved when you were 7, and we talked about some early entrepreneurial experiences. You started a lemonade empire. Tell us about your first foray into running a lemonade stand.
Yeah, my first M&A.
Yeah.
This comes up a lot. So we like lived in a cul-de-sac in New Jersey, and I was like, I'm gonna start a lemonade stand. First of all, don't ever start a lemonade stand in a cul-de-sac because only your neighbors go there. That was like an awful mistake. But I learned that after like 2 days, and I moved to like a busier street, even though I had to carry everything. So I started this lemonade stand, and then this like annoying kid down the street also opened one, and the cars all came from that direction, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like this was my idea, and he stole my branding because I had like this sign, and it was like really creative, and I like cut lemons out of it, and he did the same thing, so I was super annoyed. So I don't know, it was lemonade, like 25 cents or something. I'm really old. But I went to my dad and I said, Dad, can I borrow $30? And he was like, for what? And I was like, I'm gonna acquire this lemonade stand. So he gave me $30 and he like gave me payment terms, and he made me sign a piece of paper. And I remember I had the $30, I was so excited. It was like the most money I'd ever held. And I like walked down and I basically told this kid I'd give him $30 to buy his lemonade stand, but he still had to work for me. So he did. So much money. And then we had like another kid down the street open another one for the other cars. And then basically, since mine was in the middle, it was like totally pointless to have. So I would just like sit at home and watch Nickelodeon while these two kids were selling lemonade for me.
Like I said, you can tell a lot from a kid's first job, whether they hustle, acquiring your competitors at 7 years old, or how old were you?
Yeah, I was 8 probably.
Just moved in. That's a pretty
Yeah.
nice way to take over the
Yeah,
neighborhood. Good for
yeah.
you. So franchising at 8 years old, you're ahead of the game. All right, so go through high school. Where did you decide to go to college?
I went to Penn State and I never finished, but is this gonna be on YouTube?
Not unless you say it's okay.
So my mom thinks I finished, but but basically I had interned for Johnson & Johnson, and I was a really great intern, and then I stayed and did I did a co-op, and then I stayed and did an internship, and I was like, actually though, that was awful. What am I thinking? I was doing like customer logistics for Johnson & Johnson, and they're like, congrats, you're gonna be on the Walmart account. I was like, ooh, that sounds like a big deal. And they sent me to Arkansas for like 8 weeks, and I was like, what?
Congratulations.
I was like, no, I'm supposed to be in New York. But I did that, and then basically they offered me a job here in LA to go work for Neutrogena, which is over by the airport. And I remember talking to my boss at the time because he'd basically gotten promoted to like run corporate strategy for them. And we'd like built a really great relationship, and I just had learned, like it wasn't part of like the normal, it was like past the like Walmart order processing, and I'd learned a ton over the last few months. And I remember being like, oh, I can't take the job. I have to go back to school. And he's like, why do you have to go back to school? And I'm like, well, so I can like get my degree and get a job. And he was like, you idiot, like I'm offering you a job. So I took the job, and it was great because I was like, I was 19 or 20. I was in LA. I was like making a bunch of money, and I didn't like really have anything to do with it. I was like, like going out in like Marina Del Rey, and buying like dollar beers at like Brennan's. But I moved out there, and I remember it was a really cool experience because I didn't fully appreciate the fact that I had skipped a bunch of steps to get there, and it had been, I think a lot of what I talk about is like taking chances in preparation, but a lot of it is just luck too. And I had gotten really lucky to be assigned in my internship to this person, and then obviously worked my ass off, and then this is the kind of person who was also like me, like very untraditional. So a lot of stars kind of aligned there. But I remember, working there for about a year, and I was working in like, what do they call it? It was like portfolio management, and it was the division of the business that would make sure that all of the different skincare brands weren't cannibalizing each other too much. And actually, I look back now, it was such a cool opportunity, but I was super bored. And I remember working a lot with the different marketing teams because we were talking about new product launches. And I got super into marketing. And I said, hey, like I really, whenever you think I'm ready, I think I want to go into marketing. Like this is really interesting to me. I didn't know how to classify it at the time, but I'd always been really interested in how people interact with brands, how brands talk to people. And I remember someone telling me, you can't work in marketing because you don't have your MBA. And I don't know if that's still the rule there, but because it's such a big company with so many people, you have to have your MBA to work in the marketing department. And I was like, how am I supposed to get my MBA? Like, I like left school to work for you guys. So I was really pissed off about it, in the way that like 20-year-olds are with nothing to do. And I was like, I'm gonna go off on my own. So at that point, I was like getting really into social media, and like just joined Twitter. I like went to South by, and I was like, oh, there's this like cool thing called Twitter. And I was like, I have a feeling that this can be really beneficial for businesses. So I'm gonna help them to it. And again, I think a lot of it comes from like right place, right time. It was like a very early time when there weren't a lot of like social media experts and social media consultants. So I quit my job.
How long were you at Neutrogena?
Almost 2 years.
Was Susan Sweet there when you were there?
Yeah. Yeah, do you know her?
Yeah.
We should chat. Yeah.
And so you didn't graduate from college. You didn't tell your mom.
No, so I was, to be fair, I was only a few credits shy, and I said I'll finish it online. And then I just didn't do it. And then, but they let me walk. So I walked.
Yeah, so
and my parents came, and then I was like, I'll finish it online, but they don't need to know, because the thing's blank when they hand it to you.
Empty tube.
Yeah. So whatever.
All right.
There's pictures. It's amazing.
If you have a cap and gown and you shake
I'm
the
really
hands of a
gunning
dean,
for like an
you've
honorary
graduated.
degree. So.
That's you're in that category soon. Yeah. Okay, so you worked for 2 years at Neutrogena, and then you see sort of the trends in social media. There are no experts at the time.
Yeah.
And
I remember we were launching this thing called the Wave. It was like one of those like vibrating like face cleaner things, and they were. I didn't know anything about money, but they were paying an agency in New York to like talk about it on MySpace. I'm so old, but I remember seeing the invoice for it and being like, holy shit, like that's how much these people make. So I like kind of had that in my head, which was super misguided. But yeah, I like quit my job because I thought I could do it.
So did you start on your own before you joined?
Yeah, so
Warby?
my genius plan was that I was gonna quit my job and be like a social media marketing consultant in 2007 or 8. So I was like, I'm so awesome. I like saved all this money. I finally turned 21. Like I can get drinks with people that are clients. And it was so tragic. Like my first client was this little cafe on Beverly Boulevard. And the things I tweeted for them were like, come in today and like whisper the password and you'll get like a free vanilla shot in your coffee. But this was like super innovative back then. I remember, so in all seriousness, this was the time when food trucks were becoming a thing and people were losing their minds because obviously like you would want to find these food trucks like Kogi Barbecue and you'd want to find these food trucks and then all of a sudden they started using Twitter to tell you where they were. And this was like really the coming of like social media real time, like Foursquare was becoming a big thing. And I kind of just like dove into it and like dove into that world and like tried to learn everything I could about it. And in that year, like my first client was that like sad little coffee shop. And by the end of the year, I was running the digital marketing for some of the movies coming out of Fox Studios. So it was like a big year of growth. And I always like to say that line because it is like a big, going from like Buzz Coffee to Avatar is like a long road. But it was hard. I mean, I think there were a couple months when I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay rent. And I was like, ended up being an assistant to a director in Hollywood for a few months. I was an awful assistant. And doing a lot of other side things, but that year was really just like me taking a chance on myself and honestly like being so clueless. Because if I knew more back then, I wouldn't have done any of that.
Yeah, that's the advantage of being their age. You don't know what you don't know.
I mean, I'm still pretty clueless, but.
Yeah, well, in your business,
like,
you seem to know what you're doing.
It works out.
And yeah, so back then before there was, Fox now has an entire team in-house to do digital marketing. Huge team actually, so you preceded all of that. And then tell us about sort of how you entered Warby Parker, what the stage of that business was, what Warby Parker does in case people don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's such an interesting thing to observe, even as you're doing things, to observe patterns and movements and see things happening again because it comes up sort of with Away. So share with us what happened at Warby Parker.
Yeah, so fast forwarding a few years, I had moved to New York. I actually joined a larger digital agency that then got acquired by Vice. And that's a whole other story. But I was leaving that agency and I was like, why did I move back to New York? It's so cold here. And I had my boyfriend at the time and I had decided to move back to LA where life was better. And we were all packed up and he had actually left New York already and was like getting the house set up. And in the last couple of weeks that I was there, my friend who worked for this thing called Tumblr, which was like a up and coming thing at the time, was like, hey, you should talk to these guys at Warby Parker. It's like this startup that start to sell glasses, and I think they need some help with social media, like maybe you can consult for them, like while you're in LA. So I was like, sure, why not? I have nothing to do. I have 2 weeks left in New York. So I got coffee with someone from there, and I was just so enchanted with like what they were doing, and not because they were selling glasses, but I think sometimes you talk to people and you kind of just get this feeling that like they know what they're doing, this is gonna make a big difference. And I'd never had that. That was the first time I ever felt that way after having a conversation with someone, and I was really, really excited by what they were doing. And I took a full-time job at Warby Parker without telling my boyfriend. And I was like, oh, I'm not moving to LA anymore. He's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm here. But it was honest. I flew back and forth for a while. It didn't work out, long story short. But anyway, Warby Parker, we were, I remember telling everyone, and I had just come off working at this agency where, it was like early to mid 20s, working for like Budweiser, Burton, Ford, Disney, like Estee Lauder, like all these big brands. We were doing like really cool stuff with them on primarily Facebook. And I remember telling all my friends that I was gonna go work for this startup that sold glasses online. And everyone was like, are you insane? Like, you should move back to LA. Like, what are you doing? And I had like stuff lined up here too, but I don't know, it just felt right. And when I joined Warby Parker, it was about 15 people, like pre-Series A. They had 12 pairs of glasses that you could buy. Like no stores, like little office in Union Square. And actually the day I started at Warby Parker is the day I met my Away co-founder staff. So I don't know, like I hate to, like everything happens for a reason, but I went there, I spent almost 3 years there, and I literally started out like signing them up for Instagram and like tweeting back at customers. But I think when a company grows so quickly, you're forced to grow with it if you're the right kind of person for that. And I think, I mean, that experience changed everything. I think there's not a single intro or press article or like TV segment that doesn't mention that I worked at Warby Parker, which like rightfully so. I learned everything from there. But mostly I realized that you could have an idea and you could take an industry that's so old and so dated and so boring and really breathe life into it. And that's not something I even thought to do until I worked there. Like before that, the goal was always let's work for the biggest company possible, or let's do agency work for the biggest company possible. Like I remember when I was at the digital agency before Warby Parker, smaller brands would come to us and I would think they were cool, but I was like, no, they're like not big enough. And I'd come from Johnson & Johnson and Neutrogena, and it just completely changed my whole mindset on the impact you can make at work. And I remember, you know, it started out as 15 of us and 30 of us and 50 of us. By the time I left, there were about 200 people. And yeah, it just changed my perspective on everything. Like we had pretty much made a dent in this eyewear industry that was super monopolistic, really old. There was no new innovation in it. And they're continuing to do that. So very grateful for that experience.
And you mentioned some of the things you took away from there that you certainly applied at Away. So you left Warby Parker and then you went directly to All Saints for a bit. Mm-hmm. So just share with us what you did at All Saints, and then we're going to shift to sort of the origins of Away.
So this is interesting because I think if I knew what I know now, I don't know if I would have moved to All Saints, but I kind of had this thing where I'm actually kind of seeing it now a lot at Away too, where you start somewhere so early and it's so small, and the company is growing really quickly, and you're growing really quickly as an individual, but it's not necessarily at the same pace, or it doesn't match up. And when that happens, this is so crazy to say now because Warby Parker was growing from like 5 million to like hundreds of millions in revenue, but I had personally felt like I had hit my ceiling. Just because like the pace of our growth didn't match, or like the company's growth and my ambition, or what the company needed from me. Like I can't pinpoint exactly what it was, but there's just like a disconnect in like, I'm not growing with this anymore. And then what also happens is you work, admittedly, like you work for a company that is a big name, gets a lot of press, has a lot of growth, and you get called by a lot of recruiters. So as like in your mid-20s, that's like really hard to keep your ego in check. You're like, I'm the shit, like everyone wants to hire me. And you don't realize how much of that is attributable. It's like the place where you are. So I got a call from a recruiter. Fast forward a few months later, I'm living in London. I'm working for All Saints, and I was like on the executive team of this fashion retailer. And I hadn't like ever really worked in fashion. I hadn't ever really worked in retail. Like I helped open a couple stores for Warby. But all of a sudden, like, I'm calling the shots. I have a big team. I'm doing a lot of cool things. But I think looking back, and I had a great time, and I loved my time there. I tried to make as big of an impact as I could. But looking back, I think I didn't understand the extent of my ability at that scale. So they had 100+ stores, you know, several hundred million pounds in revenue a year. They were going through a turnaround period, so really every move you made was highly scrutinized, but also highly impactful. And for me, I was just like, "Ooh, I live in London," and I had all these like very startup-y tactics and like ways of working with people that just didn't work in a 20-year-old company. So it was like a big, not the London part, but like in a corporate setting, it was a big culture shock for me. And it's funny when I talk about this stuff because I'm like, God, I was such an idiot. Like I could have made so much more out of it. But at the end of the day, what I did at All Saints was like I tested and piloted a lot of new things. We opened an innovation lab in San Francisco. I had a few pilot stores where we would try out new retail technology. But in the long run, it was like a private equity owned company. And we chose like not to invest in like full rollouts of things. And so I was there for 2 years and I wanted to move back to New York and then I started Away.
And
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. It's interesting to hear, you know, the difference of knowing yourself, and particularly when you're young. You know, you're like, some of them are chasing brands and names. I want to work for, you know, Morgan Stanley, or you name the blue chip, you know, Facebook, Google, and for you to realize like that.
My mom supports you all.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell everyone you work for Facebook. Yeah. No, to just sort of know your DNA and to know like, you know, I'm good at startups. You know, I'm good from 0 to 100, but maybe I'm not the person to scale from 100 to 10,000.
Yeah,
and some of the tactics they use.
I'm still learning that, right? So I think I was if I look at the places where I was most successful, it was like places that were like 1 to 100 people. Well, Away is now 150 people, so like I'm screwed. I have to like learn how to, you have to rewire yourself as these companies grow, and I think that's something that we're always trying to instill in everyone that works at Away, because we have some incredibly talented people that have been there since we were 5 people, 20 people, 40 people. And it's not like they've gotten worse at their jobs. They're still amazing and they're still growing, and they continue to perform as well as they did when they started. But the demands of the company are so different. It's just like, we tell everyone Away, it's like getting a new job every few months, except imagine if no one told you you had a new job. So like you're doing the same thing and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm not doing well. And it's because the company's totally changed. So one of the big things we always say is that with my co-founder Steph and I, is that there are no unwritten expectations or unspoken expectations, because it's really easy for us as founders who have a super clear sense of where the company is going, what we're trying to do, and we don't always communicate that down. But it's really easy for us to be like, oh, this person doesn't fit in this role because the company has grown and they haven't realized it. And it's like, I think back to my time as an employee, and it's like, how would you know that your job has changed in literally overnight, unless like your manager had that conversation with you about setting expectations. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a different employee or founder at a company that's 50 people as I am when I worked at a company that was like 1,000 people globally.
And you're going to have to think about what type of people you hire if it's really that fast paced and people's jobs and responsibilities are evolving that quickly. You have to hire nimble people who aren't sort of like, I only do this and this is all I do.
Yeah.
So
and even just the expectations of if you worked at Away when we first started, it was really cool because you got to work on everything and everyone did everything, and you had to because it was like 10 people. And now there's a lot of like grumbling around the office because people have FOMO and they feel like they haven't, they're not involved in as many projects as they used to be because everyone's really specialized now and we have really specific project teams. And I think we explained to everyone the other day that it's not, we basically worked our asses off to make sure the company got to a place where there were enough people that you didn't have to do everything. But people are kind of seeing that in a negative light. So even just explaining to that and making our expectations clear. But it's different. Like I have to be a different manager. I have to be a different kind of leader. And I think even now as friends like make transitions into, I have friends who like I interned with, like and who I stayed really close to when we were all starting out. And one of them is like really high up at Samsung. Another one is like chief brand officer at Ford. And sometimes I remember leaving Warby Parker and being like, and wanting to recommend one of them for my job, and them being like, I don't think I'm right for it. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was like, what do you mean you're great at marketing? But they had understood long before me that like being good at marketing in a big company and being good at marketing in a startup is like totally different things.
Yeah, again, you got to know what you want to do. So let's just sort of you never really envisioned being an entrepreneur, even though you were a dominant lemonade empire. Mm-hmm. You never set out to say, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. You actually talked about working for big companies and wanting to sort of be involved in that type of organization. So again, everyone's looking for the idea. How did the idea find you, or how did you find the idea? What was the sort of the catalyst for Away?
Well, it was more like my suitcase broke. I had asked a ton of people for recommendations, and I just didn't get any good ones. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, why isn't there a brand of suitcases that people like? Why do all the suitcase brands like Samsonite and Tumi just love to talk about like nylon and zippers and wheels and stuff like that, instead of talking about travel, which is like the most fun and most exciting thing you can talk about. And I think the more I thought about it, and this was obviously a bit later in my career, I realized that I could build it. And when I ran the idea past Steph and we talked about it for hours, we realized pretty quickly that like this didn't exist and we could be the ones to do it. Neither of us wanted to start a company. And I think a lot of people, especially now, go into it being like, I want to be a founder, I'm going to start a company, and they kind of run through their list of ideas of companies they want to start. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I've seen that work a lot, but I think also it's like, I think sometimes some people want to be a founder so badly that they end up founding something that they don't really care about. And if you don't care about it, like that is not going to get you through like the really shitty nights, like staying up all night talking to your factory, or like, just the really hard things. Like we kept doing it because we love it, and like we wanted to do, and we chose to do it. And I think going into it and starting Away, like we were at a point in our careers where I had just left All Saints. I was moving back to New York, and I was interviewing for a bunch of different jobs, for a bunch of like VP of marketing jobs at like companies that I thought were really cool. Steph was doing the same thing. She was like interviewing for she was still in business school at Columbia, and she was interviewing for like VP of supply chain jobs at other direct-to-consumer startups. And obviously we were in a really fortunate position. One of our investors were like, wow, this is great. You guys like are on the older end for starting a startup. And I was like, what? I'm like 27. But
it's a bad narrative.
Yeah.
It really is.
So many investor stories. But we, I guess what we thought is worst case scenario, we can start this company, and if it sucks, we can I could go be a VP of marketing at some brand in New York. I actually don't know if that's if I could have done that, but yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if it was really taking such a massive leap, because I do feel like we had a big safety net. I think you can take a lot of these risks really early in your career, like when you first graduate, or a bit later when you have other things to reference, even if you have that gap. But neither of us really felt like it was super risky to do, so we just did it.
And the more you looked into it, what was it about the opportunity? Obviously that there was very little brand value, goodwill associated with sort of luggage. And sort of how did you research the market? Did you watch consumer behavior? Did you focus on product? I mean, how did you size up that this was a real opportunity, that there was profit to be made, and that, sort of it seemed like someone overlooked this thing for a long time?
Yeah. So I'm one of those people that, like, when I hear of something interesting, like this movie Winchester, I basically just start like looking on Wikipedia and read everything about it, and then in about 2 days I know everything about it and like can write a book. So basically the same thing happened with luggage. We're like, yeah, maybe we should start a luggage company, and we should honestly be like research analysts, because we had like hundreds of pages of information about it. We found it was a $32 billion industry. We like quickly learned who all like the key players are. We read all of the like the public company filings, and within a week we were just we were also unemployed. So Steph like didn't go to any of her business school classes, and we were in our pajamas on her couch, and we were just like on our laptops, just like eating pizza and reading about luggage. But we did a ton of research, and I think we were able to make like a really informed decision to keep going. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So I remember she skipped a few classes, and we went to like the luggage trade show in Vegas that March. And then all of a sudden we were on a plane to China, and we were like, went to meet with a bunch of factories. I honestly, it was such a blur, but we just kept, like when you get in a Wikipedia black hole, and like that's what it felt like, but it was for like 9 months, and we started a company. Like all of a sudden we had like a bunch of factories, and we had a design, and we had industrial designers, and we hadn't hired anyone yet, but like we were doing the branding. And then, and I think it felt really real to me when we hired our first hire, who was like an operations associate, and she had, we had announced our seed fundraising. We raised, it should have felt real when we raised $2.5 million, but we announced our seed fundraising in TechCrunch, and like a bunch of people emailed us to apply for a job at Away, and we hired one of them, and she's still with us. And but that's when it started to feel really real to me. I'm like, oh, it's not just us sitting in her living room anymore.
Did you, for the seed round, was it like friends and family first, or are you counting the seed round as after friends and family?
So it was after friends and family. So I think that's, so this,
Going
so
to
I
professional
basically,
investors this time.
Yeah, so I basically called Steph in January of 2015. She had finished business school. She was finishing business school that semester. I was like sleeping on her couch. And we decided, like, again, it snowballed, and we like found a factory that we liked. We wanted to hire industrial designers to help us design the product. And then we had to pay them, and we were like, oh, neither of us have like $100,000. So we raised, we raised over $31 million, but this $100,000 was like the hardest money we've ever raised, because we didn't want to ask our friends and family for money. And I remember being like super hesitant about it, and being like, I don't want to like ask these people for a favor, and I feel uncomfortable asking my friends for money. And I remember she just like whipped me into shape. She was like, you're not asking for money, you're giving them an opportunity to invest in something, and we're gonna make them like their money like 100 times over. And she was right, but I didn't have that perspective. But we raised $150,000 seed round. It was literally like our friends, family, old coworkers, bosses, like work friends, writing us like $10,000 to $20,000 checks.
And at that point, you didn't have a prototype to show them. You just sort of had an idea and sort of what you were working on.
No, that was like the faith round, because
Total faith.
Total faith.
That's what friends and family are for.
They're like, well, you guys have been like really into this. Sure.
A good bet.
Her boyfriend at the time, now husband, wrote our very first check for $10,000.
Isn't that an awesome feeling?
Yeah,
Actually,
it's
when
awesome.
Someone
It's actually annoying, because
you,
now they as a family own more of the company. No, but I remember, I think part of it too was like he wrote us a $10,000 check, and he was like, Jen, you really need to like get off my couch and get an apartment. And I was like, okay, but we're still not going to pay ourselves. So I stayed there for like another 2 months.
You should like sort of relish that moment, even if it's not a huge amount of money. At the time, it's a lot of money, because it's sort of the difference between like moving forward and not moving forward. But like,
insane. It was like signing contracts that would get us designs that we could give to factories. And that's what led us to raise our seed round, because the friends and family round happened. We used that to pay our industrial designers, and in like helping design and prototype the bag. We had done like tons of consumer research and customer surveys at that point. And we got to a point where we like had the designs, we had the factory, and we had to put in a deposit for our first order. And we're like, I guess we have to go raise money now. And then that's when we raised our first institutional capital.
And when you did that, it was sort of an interesting approach. Most people are raising money while they're running the business, and it's sort of we need enough money to keep the lights on for whatever's next. You guys had a different approach where you set a time period, didn't you? And sort of said, we're raising money during this time. Was that friends and family, or was that for the institutional round?
We didn't. We kind of raised money for specific milestones. So we knew friends and family money would get us industrial designs, and then we knew seed money would get us our first order. And then after that, the way we did it was basically was working backwards. So like friends and seed was like one thing. By the time we got to raising our Series A, which was like a $9 million round, we basically said, this is how much we want to raise. This is how much dilution of the company we're willing to take. So that means, and it's doing a lot of research across like a lot of direct-to-consumer companies, talking to friends who are founders and investors. But we're like, if this is how much we want to raise, this is what our valuation needs to be, so that we only give away as much of the company as we want to. And in order to get that kind of valuation, this is what our revenue and growth needs to be like. So it wasn't like, let's wait till we need the money. We were like, as soon as we reach this amount of revenue and amount of growth, then we'll be able to raise at that valuation. And that's how we did our Series A.
And I hope you hear the difference of raising money. Some of you are raising money, whether you're asking for people to please, please, please invest in you versus inviting them.
Yeah.
Like this train's
No,
moving.
by the time it was Series A, it was
Yeah.
like maybe we'll talk to you.
Is that right?
Yeah. No, our attitude had totally changed. I mean, the big difference between seed and Series A is seed, you're still giving them an opportunity, and you should believe in your idea and like what you're offering them. But seed is really still people just going out on a limb for you, and they're betting on the team, and they're betting on the people and your ability to execute on this idea. By the time you get to Series A and B, it's like, here are our numbers, here's what we've done. Like, are you in or out? Not maybe nicer than that.
Yeah, but still, like that's a great position to be in. And was that that was the first time either of you had raised institutional money, right? And then, in which round did you like double the amount that you sought to actually raise? Wasn't there one round where you raised more than you actually went out to raise?
Well, no, we were like oversubscribed for the rounds. I think something that's been really unique about our fundraising situation is that we raised our A, and then when it came time to do our B, like we had decided we were going to raise our Series B at a certain point, and we were discussing it with our board, and our board was like, we'll just do it. Like, could we have shopped it around, gotten a higher valuation, done all of that? Like, for sure. But at that point, it's like we were so focused on building the business. We love our investors, like love our partners, love our board. And so it was just the best decision for us.
Yeah, I mean, if they sort of know the company, and you have to take less focus away from running the company.
Yeah, and fundraising is a full-time job.
It is. So everyone knows, like when an institutional investor invests in you, they're going to ask for a board seat. So when she says we love our board, the board consists of companies that have invested in her already. So that's why they're already sort of ready to go to the next round.
Yeah, and our board's still 4 people.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's me, Steph, someone from Forerunner, who was like our earliest investor, and someone from Global Founders Capital.
Super small. How do you break ties?
Never had to.
No? Okay. Usually you have an odd number on your board.
Yeah.
We
have a very vocal board observer from Excel.
Is that right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Excel's usually active.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about why are you and Steph good partners?
We're just so completely opposite. I think we have a really unique relationship. She's you basically have 2 people both running the company that are so different from each other that my focus has been on brand and marketing and creative and like the consumer experience, and she is just like she just runs the company. She's like incredible in like ops and finance and supply chain, and just like, I mean, I genuinely look up to her so much. But I think when we were starting the company, it was really interesting because a lot of times you'll have two co-founders who maybe like both met at Goldman, and like they have a lot of the same strengths, or they both met, like a lot of times your co-founders will meet in the same workplace or in the same classes, so you have the same interests. But like Steph and I are so different that when we first started the company, we kind of wrote all the different company departments down on Post-its, and we were like, what do you want to be in charge of? And after like 10 seconds, all the Post-its were gone, and we each had 7 of them. And at no point did we like try to go for each other's ones. And I think we really, we just stay in our lanes, you know, and we trust each other so much. Like obviously I care about the financials of the business and how healthy our supply chain is. But because I know that there's someone in the company who cares as much as I do and is as invested as I am, that is like a complete expert in those things, I never have to worry about it. And it's the same thing. Like, of course she cares about the brand and the messaging and positioning, but she knows that's all I think about. So it's like, together we just make like one super founder.
There you go.
Yeah.
We see it sometimes. You know, you have 4 MBAs on a team with pretty similar backgrounds. You're like, really? How many MBAs do you need?
How do you make up your mind
Yeah.
on?
And
Yeah,
what
that's-
missing skill sets do you not have on the team? You know, you got to look at sort of what the gaps are. All right. So, at what point did you realize we've got something really special? Like, when was that moment where like, holy cow?
I don't know. I'm like still waiting for it. I
Really?
think no, not anymore. But sometimes people are like, "Isn't this crazy?" Like I was sitting at the airport on the way here, and I saw like 30 Away bags in the span of like half an hour, and I was like, "This is insane." And I think it's more like, obviously we look at the numbers every day. I remember our first $1 million day, and we were like, holy shit.
$1 million day?
Yeah, we had $1 million day like a few months ago, and I remember being like, oh, this like, I remember knowing it was a big deal, but for me, because what I care about is like brand resonance and like people using it and building something that's like recognized globally. Like when I'm in the airport and I see all these people with it, that's when it is like a real thing for me. But I remember the first time it kind of felt really crazy is we wanted to launch the company before Christmas, and we found out that the product wasn't going to be ready in time from the factory. But kind of with like my PR background and thinking about how to launch things, I was like, we have to launch the company before Christmas, or at least to announce it. So I was like, let's write a book. And I had my friend who works at the New York Times interview like 40 influencers and write a book about their travel experiences, and we like self-designed and self-published it, and it was like in this beautiful gift box, and it was $225, and it came with a gift card to this suitcase that didn't exist yet, and this was like our pre-order. So like there's nothing more boring than a pre-order, no one will buy that. But basically, because we had accumulated such an amazing group of people, and these are all people that like we just become friends with over the years, and I'm such a big believer in just like doing tons of favors for people and like helping everyone out, because you never know when it's going to come back to you. Like I had people who interned for me that thankfully I wasn't mean to, and then they ended up working for like some of the most powerful people like at the companies that we're partnering with. So like be nice to everyone. But anyway, we put together these 40 people for this book, and because of who they were and because of the stories they told, there was so much like press buzz and excitement around this. And I remember thinking, this is either the stupidest idea ever, and we're gonna have like piles of these books for the rest of our lives that I'm like gonna be giving out at dinner parties, or like it'll be cool. And we sold out of the book in like a week. We made like a couple thousand of them. And I remember being like, I know the luggage that we're making is amazing. Like we put so much work into it, but the fact that we decided to take a chance on this brand, and that's what people are buying into, because there weren't even pictures of the luggage. It was like, pay money for this book and you'll get a gift card for luggage that doesn't exist. And the fact that people were buying into this brand, that's kind of when I knew that we like had something different.
Okay. Last question before students ask you some questions. You have Mike. What is sort of your philosophy, and how have you incorporated that, or baked it into the culture at Away, if you have a life philosophy?
Yeah, I think we've had I think you have to make a lot of hard business decisions in life, and I'm always like my philosophy is basically people first. I remember when I was like in my early mid-20s, and I had to. You always remember your first time firing someone. The first time I fired someone, I had to fire 50 people.
Okay.
And I was like, what am I doing? But I think, what I learned from that is you always make the decision that's right for the business, and you do it without emotion, and you kind of look at like what's in the best interest of the business. But as soon as you make that business decision, you have to handle it like with the most grace and empathy and like people-mindedness that you can. So like, without question, it was the right decision for the business to like go 50 people at the company that I was at the time. But once that decision is made, it's made, and you have to treat every single one of those individual conversations like with as much like humility and empathy as you possibly can, and that's really made a lot of the way we handle decisions harder, but also easier, whether it was at Warby Parker or Away, or even back when I was like freelancing and I had like my first intern. And you always just think about, what does the company need, what does the business need, but make sure you handle it knowing that there's like a person on that other end. And that's something we do every day. So it's just, for me, it's people first. That being said, there's no way I would have gotten to where I am. There's no way I would have survived that first year of social media consulting without, like, honestly, friends doing favors. I've done so many favors along the way without expecting anything back. But like I said, you never know where anyone's going to end up. You never know when you'll need someone to do something for you. And it really does come back to you.
And how does your, like passion for travel get incorporated into the brand, and how do your, it's one thing to say like we have a brand of suitcases, but how do people feel it? How do they experience it different than Toomey or Samsonite or anything else that they're lugging behind them at the airport?
Yeah, it's not lost on me that Samsonite or Toomey or any of these other big brands could literally take our suitcase and just replicate it overnight. They have more factories, they have more people, they have many more decades of experience in this than we do. Like, I didn't know anything about luggage when we started. But I think because our approach has always been to create a brand and talk about travel and tell stories around the brand and really focus on the emotional connection with people, it's the reason that we like wrote a book instead of just doing like a Kickstarter. That's not something you can replicate overnight. When I was at Warby Parker, I remember there were so many like $100 eyewear copycats online, and I mean just like straight like ripping off the website, like copying and pasting things using our imagery. And I remember being young and like really freaking out that there were all these copycats, and I was like, are we gonna survive? And they did. But I think it's like what that taught me is like someone can copy and paste what you're doing, but it's like, and this is why we're so focused on the emotional connection with our customers, because that's not something you can replicate overnight. So that's always our number one priority. I know the demographics are probably pretty widespread, but sort of who's the central part of if you were to describe your customer? I'm sure you know it pretty well. Yeah, probably like 25 to 40, like urban dwelling, above average, like pretty high household income, travels a lot. But that's who we built the company for. But something that's been really interesting is the fact that, there are people in college who use Away, and there's we have this 84-year-old grandmother who writes in all the time, every time she goes on a cruise. and she sends us like pictures of her in her Away bag. So it's something, because we focused on the travel experience, it's really resonated with a lot of people.
I'm buying one this week. My suitcase is sort of.
You don't have one already.
No, I know. I should have beforehand. I was hoping for a code. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll send you guys.
Do you guys have? I wonder if do you have like a if you do stuff with the NBA or a limited run, because like you do a college series, I bet you it would be huge.
Yeah, it's in the works.
I was like, we can probably get you the licensing for SC and like throw it in the bookstore and.
Yeah, maybe like one of you guys can work on that project.
Anybody want to do it?
The college licensing.
Okay, email Lauren.
We're starting a licensing
we'll set this up.
division.
So like, this
Yeah.
this is the college to launch it. I'm not joking. This is.
If someone wants to do it this summer,
This is
go
the
for
college
it.
to launch it. Sort
Yeah.
of tastemaker influence in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
super high profile. Students
Amazing.
here do things. All right, questions for Jen? Raise your hands.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm here.
Oh, hi.
I have a question. You said, Sophie, right, your partner, you're very different with her. When it comes to make decisions, do you have disagreements? And if yes, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so she has this thing that was so exhausting in the beginning, but it's really become ingrained into our culture where when it was just the two of us, it was easy because I had the things that I was like an expert at and she had her things. So if there's like a big decision in any of those departments, the person in charge of it just got to make the decision. As the company grows, obviously people bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. And the way Steph always explains it is like we're all smart people with the same goal. And that goal is to like do whatever is in the best interest of the company. So she has this thing where literally nobody leaves the room until they agree. And it's because like in practice it's really tiring. But in theory, if you think about it, it's like the only reason that two people are disagreeing is because they have a different set of information. So everyone just puts all their information on the table. And it's like, it's worked every time. I mean, when she first explained it to me, I was like, are you joking? But it works, and I think people have walked out of rooms at Away just with a completely different perspective than when they came in.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. Do you have a patent?
Yeah, it's did it get approved? Patent pending. It takes a long time, but yeah, there's a few different elements in the suitcase that have patents pending on them. Let's go.
Hi. So I wanted to ask, so we talked a lot about Tumi and Samsonite, and like I hate to bring up your competitors, but a lot of what they're known for is just being like pricey and durable. You can sometimes get it at like Nordstrom Rack, and you're like the first to do this travel idea and exploring. How do you really make sure that consumers know that that's what you're doing? Like, how do you tell that story?
Yeah, so we're a direct-to-consumer company, which means we can, basically our guideline for everything is that any product we make has to be Tumi quality or better, and then we offer it about like a third or half of the price point. And that's something that that's definitely a value proposition. At the very least, if no one cares about the brand, then they still get a really good suitcase for a lot less money. But I think something that's been really important to our success is that it's not just about the supply chain disruption. I think at this point in building a consumer brand, it's just table stakes to offer a great product at a lower price point. When you think about different direct-to-consumer companies that do this, you could probably think of one in every single industry that's like cutting out the middleman. But that doesn't mean they're an instant success. And I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, that's cool, but I think people are looking more for an emotional connection and want the brands that they spend their money with to resonate with them. So it's something we talk about, but never something we really lead with, because I think that's great short-term value for the customer. But in terms of like long-term value for the brand, there's definitely other things to talk about.
Hi, thank you for coming. I was just wondering, I know that your branding is really what sets you apart from the rest of the competition, but is there like something special? I know you said you focus a lot on the details of the suitcase. What like physically sets this suitcase aside from other suitcases?
Yeah, so I think from like a materials and just like build out perspective, like I was just saying, it's just top of the line material. Like you can't, a suitcase like this in retail prices would be like $600 to $700, and all of ours are less than 300. So I think the quality to value proposition is there, but and we've really gone top of the line on every aspect. So YKK zippers, like really premium Japanese wheels, like German polycarbonate, and we've just gone top of the line everything. I think when you are doing things like that, and it's about things people don't always talk about, like polycarbonate or certain types of nylon, a lot of it ends up being in being how like people experience the product, which is why we put such an emphasis on branding, because we needed something to draw the people in to realize how good the product was.
Hi. So my question kind of goes on that idea of the importance of branding, right? And then how do you build that emotional connection with the consumers? Like it is a suitcase, and how do you get them to jump on board with how much you love your product?
Yeah, I think it's all about context. So it's not just saying, this is a suitcase and it has really good wheels. It's more about showing and talking about what you can do with it. And I think that can be anywhere from, making sure you have the right copy and the tone of voice when you're building your brand to how you expand your brand as it grows. So we've taken advantage of the opportunity to build out an entire media arm out of our existing business. Instead of starting like a travel blog, we realized there was like a demand in travel media for something. So now we have a quarterly print magazine with a 7-figure revenue, like ad revenue stream. So it's all of these things. I think we do a lot of. If we think about how we open our stores, it's not a store that sells suitcases. We fill it with things that inspire people to travel. We have tons of events related to travel. So it's thinking about who your customer is, what they want to do, and how you want them to experience your brand. But at the very, very least, it starts with like copy and imagery and like showing people what they can do with it. It wasn't like pictures of a suitcase on a white background. The minimum run for a suitcase? Yeah. You really want to do this USC suitcase, huh?
I do very much.
We can make it work.
For school.
Yeah, we can make it work.
Like the football team, all the athletics will sort of start, and then these guys, like all the alums, you know how many old alums are going to walk around with these suitcases?
Yeah, maybe it could be like a good class project.
It's happening.
All right. I sense a case study.
I want one. I want the first one off the line.
Amazing.
What's up?
Hey, thanks for coming in. So,
So polite. You're welcome.
we're Marshall
Everyone has said
students.
thank
We're Marshall students. We're really polite. Yeah, so I want to ask you if you've ever been a day late and $1 short when you were raising funds for your firm.
No, I think because the way we approach fundraising was like looking at milestones, we really knew we were never in a situation where like we have to raise cash, we're running out of money. When we raised our Series A, we still had a bunch of money in the bank. When we raised our Series B, we definitely didn't need to raise it then, but we took like that really milestone based approach to fundraising. So it wasn't about like, oh, we have 18 months of runway. It was about, let's reach this revenue so we can raise more money.
Since I have my quick question, how did you came out with the name of the company?
I I wish there was a better story because I get asked this all the time, but it was our placeholder, and then we couldn't think up with a better one. But it's so good, right?
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's as real as the answers over here.
Hey, thanks so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And wondering why you guys started with Suitcases and where you think you're going to go after that.
Well, we started with Suitcases because that's how the idea came about. My suitcase broke, and we knew we could make a better one and do the whole supply chain disruption thing. But as we thought about building a bigger brand around it, we realized there's so many things about travel that suck, and travel is such like a fun and exciting thing, and everyone wants to talk about it. But there's like problems with hotels and airlines and getting to the airport and airport lounges and everything basically, like booking experiences. So our next thing that we're working on, and this came organically that I just mentioned, is we've accidentally stumbled upon a really great revenue opportunity to build a media arm, because there is a gap in travel media right now. So we have the magazine, the podcast, we're working on a few other things there. But really, you know, from the travel goods perspective, we're building, you know, we have the suitcase now. We want to make the one perfect everything that you need for travel, whether it's backpacks, duffel bags, weekenders. But our approach to that isn't like, let's make 100 of them and have people pick. We want to take the same approach that we did with the suitcase, which is, you know, interview all of our customers, find out what they need in a specific product, and build the product around that. And when we first started the company, it was like 800 people that we talked to build that. And now since we're a much bigger company, like that number of people who've signed up to give us feedback is like in the tens of thousands. So we have like a ton of data to work off of.
Thank you.
Oh, there.
Hey, thanks for coming. So I have two questions. The first one is about your hiring process. So when you and your partner go into hiring, like how do you choose your next employee? And then also, so how do you keep adding value? What's next for Away? So what's your value add? Yeah.
To answer the question about hiring, I think I really, really think that when you're starting a company, it's the first 30 or 40 people that you bring on that really build that culture, because the first 40 people, Steph and I we're the first to interview every single one of them. We were pretty much the ones making the decision of whether they should work at Away or not. And I think you run into the risk of building a company of people who are just like you. Luckily, Steph and I are so different, so there's like some built-in changes in perspective there. But really, when you first hire those 40 people are the ones who become hiring managers. And because you get to a point where you're not interviewing anyone, and you get to a point where you're not even deciding what the job openings are anymore. So you're really building your company with those first dozen people, and then they're building out their teams. They're the ones deciding, okay, in order to, the way we run our company at least, everyone has goals that are set, and they decide what kind of team and what kind of resources they need to build that out. So, we're getting to the point in the company where someone starts and I introduce myself to them, and I hadn't met them during the interview process, and they talk, they're like, hey, I do this on this team, and I didn't even realize that's something the team was looking for. But because we put so much effort and we were so, we had like a very hire slow, fire fast mentality with our culture in the very beginning, that we really trust those people to continue to build out the company in the way that we would ourselves. What was the second question?
Just like the value add, like what's next for Away? How do you keep adding value? Are you based on like a lifestyle? Like is it building community, expanding different products, offerings, or what's
so we're expanding our product line. If kind of like our 10-year vision is to make travel more seamless and more enjoyable, what we're doing in the next 1, 2, 3 years is doing that by making travel goods that make the travel experience better. But we're also looking at all these different verticals where we could launch things. I think what we've been able to do in the last 2 years is create a trusted travel brand. It's not like, oh, this is a luggage brand. It's people are like, oh, Away stands for better travel. It's the reason our customers call our customer experience line to ask what hotels they should stay in. And we've really kind of created a name for ourselves as a lifestyle brand. So I think we can go in a lot of different directions.
So I see Away all over Instagram and social media, and I was wondering how much success you can attribute to being so present and successful on social media, and if that's something that you can measure.
Yeah, it's something social media has been a huge part of our growth. Instagram is the second most popular way that people find out about Away. We do a lot for it organically. We spend a lot of money on it, for acquisition marketing. But I think something we're really careful about is I have seen a lot of different waves of different platforms and different channels and their popularity and how they can grow brands and also how they can destroy brands. So if you look at the changes happening with Facebook right now, all like media and publishers are freaking out because they've built entire businesses around how the Facebook algorithm works. Everyone's like pivoted to video, and then one day Facebook is like, oh, we changed the algorithm. And now you're not getting any more traffic to that site. And that's something that as you're building a brand, you have to understand kind of the value and the power of a certain channel, but you can't build your entire brand around it. So I think there are a lot of Instagram brands right now that basically exist only because of Instagram, but they're not doing anything to diversify their channels. So if like one day Instagram decides, oh, we're just not going to show brands in people's feeds anymore, they're totally screwed. So I think it's like there's a balance between taking advantage of what's out there, but also like diversifying the mix of how people find out about you so that you're not like at the mercy of a platform. But that being said, we've put a lot of thought into, if we know Instagram is a big channel for us, it's like, how do we do things that encourage customers to post because we know that user-generated content is a big driver for us? How do we design our packaging so that people are more likely to post about it? How do we make sure people like tweet about us after they purchase a bag? So just thinking about it every step of the customer journey.
Thank you.
Can I add one last thing? For your lifetime value of the customer, so I would imagine like you buy one luggage, right, and then you want to replace it until it breaks down or something happens with it. So how do you, like, I guess, upsell or cross-sell, or what are your like lifetime value?
Yeah, that's a question we got a lot when we were first raising money for the business, just lifetime value. I think lifetime value is a really important thing to measure. I think when it's something like luggage with such a, it's affordable luggage, but still a relatively high ticket price. So compared to cosmetics, when people are buying, $10 to $20 of a product at a time, when someone buys something from Away, at the very least, they're spending $225. That's our cheapest suitcase. So basically, because of that, we've built a model where we look at our acquisition cost and keep it under a certain level so that we're first purchase profitable. And we've been really disciplined to, we obviously play around with different acquisition channels, but if we're like, this is how much money we have to acquire a customer, and if the only thing they ever buy from Away is one suitcase, we'll have made a profit on that customer. That's kind of been our theory, and that's what we've really been disciplined against. What we've found, though, over the last couple of years is that like people don't just buy one bag. They buy a bigger bag, or they buy a bag as a gift. And this year we're launching, 30 to 40 more products. And all of that is just like adding to their lifetime value. But we've kept the acquisition costs so low that everything they buy after the first product is just profit.
Couple more questions. There's one right behind you, Fleur.
Thank you for coming. Happy Valentine's Day. My question is, how has the company dealt with new airline restrictions on smart luggage?
We've been dealing. So it's been interesting because I think it's one of those things that you don't really imagine as like a 2-year-old company you'd be dealing with, but we've been in really close contact with the airline. So for those of you who aren't familiar, over the last few weeks, kind of like the same thing that happened with hoverboards that were like exploding, even though this has never happened with an Away suitcase or any smart bag that I know of. Airlines decided to restrict how you could check or carry on bags with lithium-ion batteries. So Away bags have a built-in power bank. Doesn't power anything in the bag. It powers itself, so you can charge your phone. But what's been really interesting is that on paper, the policies are fine for us and totally in line. And there are other smart luggage companies that unfortunately, like, you just can't bring on a plane anymore. But we were like, oh, it's great, it's totally fine. But where you run into is because airlines are so big and they're not as nimble and there's so many people involved in enforcing these rules that by the time it gets to the gate agent, there's not a clear understanding of what's allowed, what's not. And actually our position as kind of like the startup leader in like the smart luggage world is that we're the ones that gate agents recognize. So they, some people have had a hard time with gate agents because they'll call them out for the Away bag and they're not like super familiar with their own airline's policy. I think it'd be really easy for a brand to just be like, we know our bags are fine with the regulations, like, sorry you had a bad time. But because we exist to make travel easier, we worked really hard kind of on behalf of our customers. So anytime someone tweets at us and they're like, oh, I had a bad time with Delta or American, we're on the phone with someone at Delta and American, and we now have like corporate contacts who we are calling all the time, and working really closely with them to make sure that not only do their policies and regulations make sense, but that they're being enforced across the board in all of the airports, at every gate. And we're also investing like pretty significantly into like a retrofit program. So our old batteries, our new batteries you can just pop out, and our old ones you have to remove from the inside, which is just a little more inconvenient. So any customer who has one of the older bags will be offered like a retrofit kit to give them the new thing. And that's not something that we had to do, but I think what we're in this for is like investing in like a customer that we want for life. And I think this situation over the last few weeks could easily have been the thing that like brought our company down or have been like a huge disaster for us, frankly. But what we've seen out of it is the amount of like customer love and customer goodwill that has come out of it because of our response has been really amazing. And what's really made me realize how much loyalty to Away there is. Because we just want to make it clear that we are taking care of the customer. And like literally someone was like, I was boarding a plane, Delta made me put all my stuff in garbage bags, and I had to like leave my bag at the airport in the garbage, which is, that's obviously not our fault, but we took such good care of them, and like that now they're like, oh, I just recommended that 10 people buy Away bags, and I'm like, really? Like, that's insane. So I think you can, even though it's not our fault, you can take something like this and really turn it around.
That is a great lesson. Whenever something goes really bad in your company, if you do the woe is me, it's bad. But if you actually go out of your way to make sure that the customer is really well served, you'll get more business from it. You don't wish for the accident, you don't wish for the change in regs, but when it happens, you can actually build on it.
Yeah.
Another question out there before we go? All right, it's Valentine's Day. It's a lot of stuff going on, I know, at USC. It was so nice for you to come here. We're going to thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's give her a Valentine's gift to sort of leave. Okay, yes, first. Great questions, by the way. Really good questions. And so before we leave, and this is Jen's first time here at our class, and we wanted to come back, and we want to grow the USC luggage line, first in the US, best in the US. We'll get that started. Well, let's think about, there's so many great lessons tonight. So I want to hear, in 5 years from now, after you've left, what points of advice in your startup are going to resonate for you? What things are you going to take with you from Jen's talk? I'm going to record this for you. All right, who's ready? Ready to go? Who's ready? Speak up loudly.
You can have an idea, take an industry that's old and boring, and breathe life into it.
Come over this way.
The only reason people disagree is because they have different information.
Focus on the brand.
Focus on the brand. Up top. Go ahead.
Build emotional connection with your customer.
All right. You get 3 questions, so you have to have
Same one. Emotional connection can't be replicated.
There are no unspoken expectations.
Good.
Be nice to everyone.
Do favors.
Do favors. All right, come around. Other side. Get ready.
Guys.
This is good. This is good. Go.
Tell stories to create the brand.
Tell stories.
When something goes wrong with a customer, go out of your way to fix it.
That's right.
Be adaptable to change.
When a small company grows quickly, you're forced to grow with it.
Good.
People first.
People first.
Don't try to be a founder so badly that you end up founding something you don't love.
Excellent. Up top.
It's Valentine's Day. Find a complimentary partner.
I missed anybody? Anybody? Let's thank Jen Rubio from Away.
Thank you, guys.
Happy Valentine's Day.